Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening edition of the On Air Advocate. I'm here today with a good friend, Deb, and she has a daughter, Cambria, who has type 1 diabetes. And so they just learned of this a few years ago, and being a mom that had not had a child that has had this before, or family history genetically of having it before, it definitely has been, had ups and downs and lots of things learned. So I thought no better than, adding on this week of, chatting with a mom who's going through it actively right now. First of all, Deb, how did you guys discover, and I think you said it was 2.5 years ago, right?
That was, yes.
Yeah, that you guys discovered that she had type 1. And how did that happen?
We were outside playing. It was super hot out, and she kept wanting to drink more and more water, and I thought it was normal. And she eventually took a bath that night and turned pale and felt so sick and said that something was wrong. And I knew it was more than just an average virus or a cold or some kind of stomach flu. And within about 24 hours of that, we discovered that her blood sugar had soared into the 800s, and she needed to have testing done. She was in the ER for about 12 hours. So we knew that something was very wrong. It wasn't just normal dehydration from running around. We were playing with squirt guns and running through the sprinklers, and we were having so much fun.
Right, but when you were outside, like any parent would think it's hot.
Right.
And that's why she was drinking a lot. It wasn't until she came in bath time and you're kind of noticing these aren't real. This isn't her normal.
Exactly. So I knew that by the time she got in the bath that something was wrong that day. And it wasn't just normal thirst from being dehydrated from being out in the sun. So we discovered, and we had to be in the emergency room for 3 days in a row after that, and had many, many days of training and testing after that. And several days later, she was put on a regimen of the insulin that she's on now, and we've changed that. Every quarter we go in to have the hospital, Children's Hospital, change that and alter that amount of insulin and the correction dosage that she needs. It's been a lot of changes in the last 2.5 years.
A lot of changes. So why do they change it? Is there a reason? Does the body become resistant to certain kinds, or because you said that they alternated? For someone who does not have a child that, obviously I have a child that has special needs, but I do not have a child that suffers from type 1. What is the reasoning behind? Is it something with the chemistry of the body or whatever that they change it up?
They can't figure it out. There is no answer. And that's what the really tough part about type 1 has to do with. We have a problem with monitoring her on a day-to-day basis. Part of it is she's growing bigger and she's getting, to put on more weight, which is great. But part of it is that every day changes. And we are constantly altering it because the morning dose might be too much insulin so that she ends up being too high in the middle of the day. We've now had her tested every day before she gets on the bus. And I don't want to change that for her. I want her to be the kid that doesn't feel that she's not the normal kid. They test her every day she gets on the bus. They might have to give her a granola bar before she comes home. They might have to give her a juice box, which is even more fast acting for the blood sugar level. And every day I'm here to get her off the bus and wonder how she's doing, and we test her blood. And every night before she goes to bed we test her blood. It changes every day. There is no automatic there's calculation.
No, right. And that, I have heard from other diabetics is that, especially with the type 1, is that there's no perfect answer. You can have too much, then you can have too little, then you can have too much, and it's always this yo-yo. Now, I mean, I know that there are, different types of things that innovations that, come about, like we kind of discussed a little bit about, that can regulate things a little bit more as they age, because this is something she's going to have this the rest of her life, right? Type 1 is non-curable, correct?
Correct.
And so it will be her whole entire lifespan. It doesn't ever go away.
Her pancreas has stopped working. So her pancreas is completely inoperable, and she will not be able to produce insulin for herself. So every time she has anything that involves carbohydrates, she will need to have insulin. There are ways that we've learned to get better at it. We've both learned how to count carbs better than anybody who's ever on the Atkins diet. And we have learned how to make sure that we're testing her blood more often. I wake up in the middle of the night, many, many nights, testing her blood to make sure that she's okay. And eventually we will look into the CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor, and the pump. But for right now, we're managing it well enough that we're using the Humalog pen and the Lantus pen. Humalog during the day, and Lantus is the 24-hour lasting pen. And it works for us right now.
Right. And I think that I commend you on that for starting at, this point, and then starting to just research and look at other things that are going to be, proactive, in the future as time goes on, because this is something that she's only had for 2.5 years now. So, you're still learning, and you guys are getting down your routine and trying different things and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I always say, like, leaning on the side of also being sometimes a little bit more conservative in that beginning and trying everything, because you don't know whether it's going to be a perfect fit for your kid or work or not if you didn't try it. If you jump right into, we're going to do this automatically, we're going to do that, you'll never know how things would have been. So, I mean, I think that that's a great way to stage it, that, right now in these early stages of it, you guys are working at it this way, and it's working great. And obviously after her interview, she can probably add better than I can and calculate her carbs, and she can do all of those things. I think that she can do, all things better than I can even do them.
She has learned math skills like no other fourth grader.
Right. So no one should have type 1, and no one would ever wish that, but oh my goodness, she brings out the pad and the paper, and she really takes ownership of it, which I think is wonderful in managing her care. And so I think that continuation. Now, what have you found personally as things that you found extremely positive as you've worked with other people within the community with her having this, like within the school systems and stuff? And what have you found to be kind of a struggle and frustrating?
Well, the first thing I can say is that not only has Cambria taken ownership, like you said, and she really has been great about learning how to count carbs and doing her math skills, and anybody who has type 1 diabetes is going to be probably a mathematician when they grow up. And she is really good about being able to tell me what she wants to eat, and we plan for as many sweets as she wants. She can eat as much as she wants. She can have as many sweets as she wants. It's all about making sure she has the insulin for that. My biggest, I guess, hurdle has been getting the prescriptions on board, making sure I have enough prescriptions. I'm at the pharmacy every other week, if not more. The school has been an enormous help for me. I would not be able to have a full-time career as a lawyer without the school system. Franklin's school system is amazing with how much they have helped me. We call, we text, we email. They have a Google Live document that I am able to access any time of the day to find out what's going on with her. This is high tech, really important for every family to know. Your school should be doing this. Your school should be having a live Google Doc showing you what your kids are at when they're at lunchtime. Hot lunch is tough. Cold lunch is easier because you have a better calculation for the exact carbs. Before bus time, get the dosage. Make sure you know what their blood sugar is at. The school system has been wonderful, and I will commend them for that. And
I think that also you advocating, because I think that you advocating to make sure that they're doing their part as well, and that you both are meeting each other halfway. I talk about that with even like food allergies and things like that. It really takes the ownership of not only the parents saying, I'm here 100%. I'm going to bring you the things you need. You're going to have, accessibility to the pens, the treatments, as well as I will bring in the birthday treat if it's needed. I will do this. But on your end as a school, holding them accountable to say, let's think of some ways to keep my child the absolute safest they can in this environment. What are they going to do that? And it sounds like the Franklin school system has definitely like risen the bar with doing so many, forward things to make sure that she's safe while she's there.
They have, and she was the first child in her particular elementary school to have this diagnosis. And during that first year, she had to bring home squished bags of treats that were brought home because she couldn't have the treats with the rest of the kids. And so what we've developed now is a program where we're advocating.
Okay.
Which is the whole purpose of this program. We're advocating for the schools to help these kids feel like they are a part of the rest of the school system. They're normal. They're not missing out. And so they have now found a way to dose my daughter for all the school treats that she gets. And she has a birthday coming up in a week, and I'm going to go in on that particular day, and I will give her insulin for her birthday on March 12th so she can have as many cupcakes as she wants, because she can have those things.
Right.
I go in on other days when the school has special Valentine's Day parties or Christmas Day parties, but if I'm not there, there's a school nurse that's there. There's other people in the school office that are so helpful, and they really have stepped up and said, we want to help Cambria out with what we can do for her to make her feel as much like the other kids as possible.
So working so collaboratively with all of the school is awesome, because it does happen that way. When kids do have other medical issues, and sometimes their safety is at hand, and how are you going to make it work best? But when the school takes ownership and you take ownership and you work together in such a harmonious way, you're able to make the child's their experience so much better, and everybody feels safe at the same time.
Exactly.
Well, I thank you for your tips. Is there anything, because we're almost at about 14 minutes, and I know we're going to get together again and chat about other areas of, having a child with type 1 and things that you have found even in your normal daily routines of things that have changed, as a mom, as a career woman, as all of that. But would there be, today, if we're wrapping up for today, would there be, one or two tips that you would give all parents? I know that, we talked about making sure that you are definitely advocating at your school. You're letting them know about things. You're asking them to rise to the occasion for your child, for your healthcare providers. Now, when you had said that you guys had went through classes, was that through the hospital that they offered those?
Yes.
Is there any outside other organizations that, kind of partner with that, give brochures, books for parents that could be helpful?
We have a whole library of books that we've gotten through the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation.
Okay.
And it's wonderful. Children's Hospital has been great with regard to providing training. I think that one of the ways that I wish that I could have gotten more help is with regard to the issues with the billing that I have had, with the charges and the problems with working with issues on how many confusing things happen when your child is diagnosed. Overall, I would say that my biggest challenge has been making sure my daughter stays alive every day. I need to keep her alive. And it's almost like starting over when you have a newborn child. You start from ground zero and you have to look at testing constantly, making sure the blood sugar isn't too high or too low, because either way there is eventually a potential life-threatening issue.
Right, a risk that's there.
And so that has been the hardest change for me in my life, and my daughter is a great sport about it, as you can see from
her video.
What you saw. But it's scary, and it's not something that you're ever going to be able to control. You'll never have a normal blood sugar. It's not the way that it will be for the rest of her life. It will be a roller coaster. And so it is about learning how to deal with the ups and downs more than ever before.
I think that goes back to always, that I've talked about and spoken about privately with you about that mourning process, especially for parents that their child may have not been born with a medical ailment, and then that comes on years after. You're kind of mourning what you thought once would be, and now you're kind of thrown into this turmoil. You're like in the trenches of learning all these new things and the way you have to do things for your kids and being proactive before you leave the house, and do you have the medicine bag and what documents are done at school, and now she has a health IEP and now they have to be checking up to make sure they're doing their end of things that way to make sure that she's staying safe within the school system. And if she sleeps overnight at a friend's house, and then as the friend
she does not sleep overnight at a friend's house, because the friend's parents don't know how to administer the insulin. So she can have a friend sleep over at our house, but we don't get to have her sleep overnight. And if we forget her diabetes bag, which has happened a couple of times, we have to cancel our plans, go home, and either get the bag and come back if we have enough time, or we cancel the plans entirely. She has to have her diabetes bag with her all the time, 24/7.
And so it is a complete life change. So I think that from me listening to you and hearing your words, is that I think that there is that big struggle for, parents, whether it is that your child is born with a medical condition, or whether it's something that's an onset later on in life. It's relearning how to do, it's like a whole new system. It's like redoing everything over again. But now you have all these risk factors. It's not like you're just starting with a new baby. Now you're starting with a baby or a child that has some pretty significant medical complications. And our job as parents, as we always know, is that we want to keep them safe because we love them so much. And I think that you spoke to, which I think we could do a whole nother podcast and episode on, is the whole world of, when your child isn't born with a medical ailment. Right. So whether it's your aging loved one who is going to be 90 some years old, or whether it's your child that the medical issue comes on, when they're 15 years old or whenever it might be, you have not been schooled on our healthcare system and the billing process, and knowing, does my insurance cover this? Don't they cover it? If they're not technically disabled because of cognitive and developmental disability, and they're only medically basically disabled because of sickness, what coverage are they going to get, and who's going to cover what, and then my supplies that I need to get. And I think that is a whole nother roller coaster. So aside from you being on the roller coaster of your child and your child being sick and wanting to make sure that they're safe and wanting to make sure, from friends to school to at home to your career life, now you're worried about how are you going to pay for these things, and does my insurance cover it? Am I going to have all these huge co-pays? What is that about? So I think that that could be an hour an hour segment.
We could have a 5-hour segment on that.
On that itself. But, you know, I think that all of the things you said are so relevant, and they are helpful, especially for parents who are just starting out. I mean, you're 2.5 years in. And I'm sure that, you know, even working with the organizations you have, you've heard from other parents, you know, that are maybe 5 years in or 10 years in. And that is the reason of the On Air Advocate, is to bring that together and bring that community of parents together, because we learn best from each other. So what you have to offer at 2.5 years is definitely very advantageous to the person who just found out a week ago. And
I can tell you that everyone said to me, the first year is going to be the toughest. And it was, for sure. The first 6 months was extremely scary, but it really remains difficult. People told me that 1 year later you're going to feel more comfortable with this, and I really don't, except for 2 things. I feel like I can manage the prescriptions better than I ever have. I know how to figure out when things are running low. There's so many different things you need with a diabetic child. And I feel like we are counting carbs better than anyone who's ever on the Atkins diet, like I mentioned before. So we at least got better at those 2 things, and we know how to manage the prescriptions and the carbs better, but it has not gotten easier.
Right. Well, and I can tell you, as someone who has, you know, been a caregiver to someone with severe, you know, medical complications for over the last, you know, 2 decades, that it's the long run. So I always say this isn't a short sprint. Exactly. So you need to remember, you're not short sprinting. Don't do that anywhere. Right. Put on your Nikes. You're in it for the long run. Slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, slow and steady wins the race, and that every single year you will grow and you will learn more and you will gather more information that will help you along your journey. I promise you that. I promise you that.
I believe you. I believe you, Tammy. Thank you.
All right. So on that note, I thank you for joining us so much today. If you would like to view any of our other YouTube videos, podcasts, or any of our other media applications, you can go to www.onairadvocate.com. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, Tammy.
God bless.